I will, if you give me the opportunity to go to Atlanta. A couple things I'll commit to you today. Number one, I'll read every piece of legislation I vote on. I promise. Number two, as I read that legislation, I will weigh it against our constitutional framework. If it's not constitutional, it will not get my support. If it expands the scope of government and the reach of government, I will not support it. If it takes away local control, I will not support it. If it increases the bureaucracy and the regulation that attacks the free enterprise system, I won't support it. I will support legislation that deals with tax reform. We have an antiquated tax system that's this thick that's not fair. And we need real tax reform. And anything that I can do to help support and deal with that, I will. I'll support ethics reform. To me, it's unconscionable that we have representatives in the legislature that haven't paid taxes in years. I'll deal with that given the opportunity. I've got a record that I can stand on in Floyd County. In 2007, I was elected. In 2008, the world fell apart. In the 4 years since 2008, with all that we've dealt with in Floyd County, we've kept our taxes stable. We've kept all of our services intact. We've recruited industry like Lowe's and Pet Enterprises and Source Medical, hundreds and hundreds of good-paying jobs to Floyd County. We have been able to maintain our fund balance. We have about 3 months of expenditure saved in our fund balance right now. So, as a small business guy, I know what it means to live on a budget. I know what it means to have your top line and your bottom line make sense. And so I'll take those sound business principles and I'll apply those as I go along. I'll work hard along with my fellow senators and legislators to help recruit industry to Georgia. Listen, the way we're going to get out of this is for the free enterprise system to do what it's always done, and that's create jobs. And if we create jobs, we'll dig ourselves out of this hole. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that Georgia is the most business-friendly state in the union. And so I'll work to make sure that that happens. That's just a little bit of who I am and why I'm running. Again, like you, I'm just a regular guy who got frustrated. I'm not willing to sit by and watch our country come under further attacks, to have judges legislate from the bench and continue to attack our Constitution, and for an overreaching government to continue to grow and become full of bureaucracy. It's time that we take it back. It's got to stop now. In November, we're hoping for a decisive defeat of Barack Obama, knowing that with that, there'll be trickle down into all levels of government, and we can have a conservative revolution. And I want to be part of that solution. So, thank you, and I'll if I've got any time left, I'd love to answer any questions if anybody's got any.
Sure. Do you have any specific issues or agendas that you plan on dealing with when you get to the state? And you know, it's good to say that we want to create jobs here, but how do you specifically intend to make that happen? Because government doesn't create jobs; government creates the atmosphere where jobs can be created. How will we approach that issue?
Well, I think there's a couple things we can do. One, which I know is being dealt with now in the legislature, the energy tax. We need to make sure that industry that evaluates Georgia, because we're in a competitive environment. We have Alabama and South Carolina around us, and everyone is getting aggressive about getting industry to town. And we're losing some of that, and it's because we can't be as competitive on some things. The energy tax issue is one that we have that I think is going to be dealt with. It's got good bipartisan support. I think that'll probably pass through this year. But that's the type of legislation that makes it easier for business to locate to Georgia and to stay in Georgia. So anything that we can do to deal with that. And the second part of that would be the tax code. I really do believe that we've got a complicated tax code that makes it unfair for a lot of businesses in Georgia, a little unfair for property owners in Georgia. It's just an antiquated system, and we need to deal with that. And by doing that, I think we can recruit small business people that find that it's just as competitive to do business in Georgia as it is over in Alabama. And then ethics reform. I would really like to see some ethics reform and some transparency. Again, it's unconscionable to me that we have legislators that are delinquent on years of taxes, and yet they're able to continue to run for re-election.
Okay. Staying on the tax issue, in 2008, 2010, on our ballot in the primary, we've had to eliminate the Georgia income tax. It is overwhelmingly around 90% say get rid of it. Your thoughts on that, along with the property tax, and what do you think is the best way to, I guess, collect taxes and not be a hindrance on the people?
That's a great question. First of all, the great plan was introduced here a while back, which would have eliminated all ad valorem taxes. And had that plan passed, we would have seen some pretty catastrophic effects to education and other things, because right after that's when the world fell apart. So I think when you approach tax reform, you have to do it intelligently, considering all factors. But let me give you an example of something that would be really easy to do, and that is local sales tax collection. Right now, we collect all of our sales tax. We send it up to Georgia, to the Department of Revenue. They then take that, they decide what portion of that they're going to send back to us, and they send it back to us. And if we don't think it's right, or we say, that just doesn't add up, we've had some really good months here, and we just don't feel like we're getting our proper share of revenue, and we call the Department of Revenue and say, can you give us any reporting on this? They say no. And if we challenge them on it, which we threaten to sue them, they say you can't. You're not allowed to sue us. And so there is a significant amount of money that heads up to Atlanta. They decide how to distribute it and then send it back. I think that needs to be dealt with locally. The state of Alabama introduced local sales tax collection and had over $1 billion in new revenue collected. There are a lot of, there's no auditing process, so there are a lot of businesses that just don't pay their fair share of sales tax. They just keep it. And that's not fair for the businesses that play by the rules. And so that's one way that I think we could deal with it. Comprehensive tax reform is not an easy issue. We've been wrestling with it at the state and federal level for years and years and years. And so it's going to take time, but while we're negotiating through that and working through the best options, why not institute some simple things to start with, like local sales tax collection?